This puzzling parable seems completely unfair. How can Jesus endorse such an injustice? If, as is obvious, the owner of the vineyard represents God, is Jesus telling us that God does not give to us in proportion to how much and how well we perform? Does he mean that God does not deal with each of us as we deserve? Yes, that is exactly what Jesus means. Given that reality, thank goodness God is much more generous than we can ask or imagine. Our primary relationship with God is not that of earners at all, but of receivers of God's generosity. We are given everything we have and are: our very lives, our health, our resources, our abilities and opportunities, our family and friends, even those challenges that help us grow. As fully indebted receivers, Jesus makes clear in this parable, we ought not to demand more from life or resent God's liberality to others, as did the disgruntled laborers. We are not to be dissatisfied with our lives or envious of what others receive. We are to become more like our open-hearted and open-handed Creator and Sustainer. We are to embrace God's generosity. To understand more clearly Jesus' intention in telling this parable, contrast it with another rabbinic story of that time, which told of workers upset because, in this case, another worker had been paid more than they had, even though they had worked an equal number of hours. The response to that apparent injustice was that the other man had worked twice as hard as they had. That is a human story with human values, which we can understand. The seeming inequity of pay is justified by the energy and productivity of the work. But Jesus tells us a divine story with divine values. Remember the gospel a few weeks ago when he cautioned Peter and his disciples about setting their mind not on divine things but on human things. Here is another example of God's assertion in Isaiah that as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. The disparity in the wages in the human story is justified by the amount of work. The disparity in pay in Jesus' story, a reflection of divine things, is justified simply by the generosity of the giver, who is God. That does not go down easy. For us who justify ourselves by how hard we work or how much we have accomplished, this story touches a raw nerve. We do not want to think of ourselves as dependent, as needy, as the recipient of another's generosity. Yet this parable confronts us with that reality. We are who we are, and we have what we have because of God's undeserved generosity. So how do we respond to this revelation of Jesus? What does his, at first, puzzling parable call us to? It invites us to a generosity of heart, to a magnanimity toward others. Aware of how much we have received and of how little we have truly earned on our own, we are to let go of our sense of entitlement and of our resentment of others' real or imagined good fortune. In our neighborhood, or in our congregation, or in our country, we are to welcome newcomers of any stripe, not resisting them because they are different or we were here first. When we feel hurt by others, we are to pray for and cooperate with the grace of forgiveness, not holding on to grudges, as tempting as that may be, but constantly trying to forgive others from our hearts, as Jesus enjoined us in last Sunday's gospel. When we feel sorry for ourselves and think that life has treated us unfairly, we are to acknowledge all that God has blessed us with and give overflowing thanks to God, whose love overflows on us. When we find others in need or good works that need to be supported, we are joyfully to share what we have been freely given. Instinctively, we identify with the longest working laborers in our parable, who seem to be treated unfairly. We guard our place and hoard what seems like our meager wages. But the reality is that we are, in fact, the latecomers who receive not what we deserve, but so much more. Despite our failures, despite our hard-heartedness, despite our apathy, God continues to invite us into the vineyard, to encourage us into a common venture with others, to give us more than we earn or need, indeed, more than we can ask or imagine. As those who are given all that we have and are, Jesus' puzzling parable invites us to embrace God's generosity. Amen.